Hey, Wes. How you doing?
Long time no see.
So this is 5 Favorites with Wes Chu.
Fantastic.
My good friend and awesome writer buddy, Wes Chu.
We go back a long time.
We go back further than anyone else in my professional career.
What's up?
Because we went to high school together. Briefly.
We went to junior high together.
Junior high. It was a junior senior high school.
In Nebraska.
In Nebraska.
Back in 1988.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We just dated ourselves, yeah.
Yeah, we are old. But yeah, so you're from Chicago, mostly.
I did one semester of 7th grade.
Yep.
And then we moved to Chicago.
Yep.
Which is why we never became like best friends forever,
Yep.
obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I was talking to your mom earlier. I too had Miss Reader.
Did you?
And she was one of, like, in my memory, one of the earliest like critiques of my writing I ever had.
It's awesome.
So
this is the teacher who gave me my first fantasy novel. So yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good old Lincoln East High School and junior high.
That was the Lancers, right? Was it the Lancers? I don't remember anymore.
Spartans.
Okay.
Yep. So, but Wes, you have a new book.
I do have a new book.
Tell us about your new book.
So the new book is called The Art of Prophecy. It is my love letter to the wuxia genre. When I moved to Nebraska, I think I was like 5 years old. You know, back in the 80s, Nebraska, there weren't many Asians in that state, and like I think there were 5 in the state and 4 in my family. So those old kung fu movies that they played every Sunday called Samurai Sunday were kind of like my link to the old country. So I fell in love with martial arts at an early age, and ever since I was a kid, I wanted to write kung fu books. So it took me, debuting as a novelist, getting 10 books under my belt before I finally realized that, this is what I really wanted to write my entire life. So The Art of Prophecy came out last year, and it is my love letter to wuxia.
And you are a fantastic writer. And so I actually haven't read it yet.
Okay.
It is on my list, though.
I
have read the Lives of Tao series and really enjoyed them.
Thank
Every
you.
one of those.
Awesome.
And so this is definitely high on my list to get to. Stormlight 5's been kicking me in the head lately. And so, yeah.
How big is Stormlight 5 going to be?
So Stormlight 4 was 540,000 words that I edited down to 460. I'm hoping this one will be similar in length. So,
I mean, this is 180, and this is considered.
That's considered a big.
That's
book.
considered a big book.
It's a big book.
So even if you cut your book in half, it would be a big book.
Yeah.
So
it's but we're not here to talk about books, Wes.
We're talking about video games.
We're going to talk about video games again, which we do a lot on this channel because our era. Like, what was your first console?
Apple. I'm sorry. So I started Apple IIe, but my first console was the Intellivision 2.
Oh, really? So real old. Was the Intellivision?
We're real old.
Was the Intellivision the one that my friends next door had one of these early consoles that you had to slide a card in to do the controller?
It had a disc.
Yeah.
It had a disc and it had numbers like 1 through 9.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a good system. And I mean, obviously one of the first games was Pong, but they had a football game. They had a ET game.
Yeah. Oh, was the terrible ET game?
Oh, that was
the
legendary.
Because I had the terrible ET game on the 2600, I believe it was. Whichever Atari it was that I had, we bought the ET game because we were so excited. That game
was bad.
It was terrible.
It was bad.
But the thing is, as a kid, I didn't know terrible games from good games, so we just played the game, and we just thought we were terrible at it. Yeah. We just didn't understand it. We kept falling in holes.
I mean, like the original Nintendo, they had the difficulty level Nintendo games were just all over the place. Like Ghosts and Goblins. Have you ever played Ghosts and Goblins?
Oh man, Ghosts and Goblins.
That game was insane.
Yeah, I to this day still feel a little bit like a failure in life that I never actually beat Castlevania, the original. I got to Dracula so many times, and then never quite beat him.
Getting to Dracula is probably one of it's an accomplishment. Yeah. Did you ever play Gladius?
Yes.
Without the cheat code.
Yeah. No, well, I would use the cheat code.
I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
I legitimately don't think it's possible to beat, any of those actually Contra. Did you ever play Contra?
I did. Contra was our go-to because there's so few games that were good co-op games. that you could play with your friends. We played Contra all the time. Up, down, left, right, BA, select, start.
Well, here's my brag.
Yeah?
My brother and I got so good at Contra that we could beat the game without losing a life.
Wow.
I mean, we must be literally played it
That's
like
impressive.
thousands of times. And we
Yeah.
just memorized where the bullets were coming.
So, wow. Yeah. I don't think I ever beat Contra without using any of the cheat code
Yeah,
continues.
but like definitely like the difficulty level though between the games.
Yeah.
They should have it set up in a way where like because it's for kids.
Yeah.
But when you're playing like Bayou Billy,
Yeah.
and that game is
You know, the one that also, this was on Sega, but Ninja Gaiden. Did you ever play that?
that was a great game.
Or is it Gaiden? Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden?
Gaiden. There's this one part where you would jump and a bird would fly right when you needed to jump over a pit, and it would hit you and knock you in the hole. And it killed me so many times. And I only got past it like 3 times. And like, this is one of the later levels. It'd take like an hour or so of work to get there. And then the stupid bird would knock me in the hole. And then like, yeah.
Was Ninja Gaiden the one that you could have the spinning attack?
Yes.
Or did Ninja Gaiden 2? Because I remember that spinning attack made the game like
Maybe, I don't know.
exponentially easier.
Maybe I didn't have a spinning attack because I would get killed by that bird jumping on. Anyway.
Did you ever play Rygar?
Oh, is that the one where you're a barbarian?
Rygar had he had
Yeah.
the shield ring.
Yeah.
But the thing about Rygar is, if I remember correctly, you can't save the game. So you literally have to play like for like 3 hours.
Right.
And if you don't beat it, you're
Well, that's how all these were, right? It's like you get to Dracula, it's been 3 hours, you got 1 life left. Oh, you died. Well, better luck next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember talking with my friends that, like, with Castlevania, they had found a new place where if you hit the wall with your whip, a ham dropped out, like in one of the later levels. And it was such a big deal that one of my friends had discovered this because you could, the hams were the healing items.
Yeah,
You could get, so in this really hard level later on, they're like, if you go to this specific block and break it, you get a ham. And that would like save you a life because, you know, you could.
Every life is precious.
And every life is precious. None of those games made my list.
None of those games made my list. Some of the old ones almost did out of nostalgia.
Yeah. Okay.
But none of them made my list.
So we're going to start with me so that we can end with your number 1. Okay. So my number 5 is not actually the one on the list. I changed it last minute. So I'm moving my number 5 to honorable mention, which is Knights of the Old Republic 2. Great game. I'm just moving it to, because I realized I like, as a series, the Infamous series just a little bit better than I like the KOTOR series. Did you ever play Infamous?
I did not.
Okay. So Infamous, something about it just clicked for me. And that's a thing, like, it's hard for me to play straight up story-driven games. I have to have good gameplay too.
Right.
And that's kind of where, like, a game like Infamous, that the story, it's a superhero game, but you have
It's a fighting game, right?
it's the one where you have electricity powers and you get like to skate around the city on the wires of the telephone poles connecting.
I have never heard of this game in my life.
It's PlayStation 2, I think, maybe 3. Really great game, and they do some storytelling and comic book. They do the whole thing. Like, I think a lot of people's list, they will have Half-Life on it,
Right.
because Half-Life has a great game, and one of the innovations it did is like it's an FPS, but you never have to stop the action for story.
Right.
People are just talking to you all the time. Infamous is one in that evolution. It's not an FPS. It's a third-person kind of beat-em-up, superpower-focused thing. But you never have to stop for story. Someone's always popping up on your screen talking to you.
Okay.
And, you know, you're running to some place fighting dudes, and your friend's on the phone call being like, hey, you know, GTA does that, stuff like this.
This came out on the PS2.
PS2, I think, yeah. And so, yeah, Infamous is my number 5 with Knights of the Republic as honorable mention.
That's fair.
What's your number 5?
I'm gonna start then with my number 5 if we're gonna put them in order.
Yes.
I'm gonna start with one that's kind of outside the box, which
Okay.
is Stellaris.
Stellaris is your number 5, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 4X strategy game.
Okay.
So those kind of games usually don't lend that well
Yep.
to like storytelling.
It's my favorite game genre, and there's not, spoilers, one of them on my list, because I don't consider them really story games, because this is favorite story-driven
Right.
video games.
I completely agree about the rules for this, but
Yeah.
in my case, what I really appreciate about Stellaris is even though it's a top-down 4X game,
Yeah.
you're not dealing with a story per se, is the events that they once you get the entire game, and it's a big game with lots of DLCs.
Yeah, this is Paradox, right?
Yeah.
They DLCs every 4 months for years.
But once you put them together, though, it makes like a just organic experience.
I really like Stellaris. I think it is it is quite an accomplishment, kind of a monument to what video games we always imagined they could be when we were kids, and this is doing it.
It's doing it, and it's like it's hitting you in ways where like I felt like I was, from the Federation. I felt like this is the Federation, and some huge thing comes, and it's a story that they'll like. Let's say when those have those space Mongols invade, and then you can't beat them. Yeah. But then you take over, and then you become a vassal.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Am I spoiling the game for
no? No. You may not get that event. There's different events.
You don't know if you're gonna get that event, but you become a vassal. But then like they break it themselves, and it's just like. I remember the first time that I couldn't beat these guys, I would restart so many times because I just could not lose. Right. Finally, I was like, I will submit. And then that's how the story continues. And it felt like such a fresh, like a refreshing experience of like playing a game in a way where it's not so binary, especially with the 4X games where you either win or you're completely destroyed. Yeah.
Do you, you said you were playing like the Federation style things.
I mean.
Do you have a favorite? Like, it's weird because it's not like in Stellaris, it's like a paradigm. You pick your ethos for and maybe some little thing. Like the one that I played, it's been a while, but the one that I liked the most was you were a race of robots who had this little group of organics that you took care of in a paradise.
Oh, yeah.
And they just were useless, these organics. But your job was to take care of them.
You killed everybody else.
And you got given these little organics to take care of and make a nice, and then you went out and you were space conquerors.
I mean, I used to like I used to min max all my games, but then but the Stellaris I would like. My best playing experiences were I would pick like the most worthless traits.
Okay, and see if
I would just make like the most worthless aliens and just like the most fragile, the most lazy, and then I'd just be like, how far can I get?
Oh, that's fun. I've never done that in Stellaris. I should try that.
Well, it's, like I used to be a World of Warcraft raid officer.
Okay.
A Nubarak. We were like the number one raiding guild. So like because of that, we spent so much time in video games like trying to be the best of whatever you're being, as opposed to like playing the story. So then later on in life, I'm like, why do I care?
To be the best.
What am I the best of?
Well, epic fantasy wushu stories. That's what you're the best of, right?
I'm gonna King of the Mountain. You're gonna knock me out the crown.
So my number 2.
Okay.
My number 2, I believe it's a game you haven't played because we were chatting last night. It is Hades.
Yes.
And I was pitching Hades to you. Hades is delightful. It is just a fun play experience, and it is another one a little untraditional to pick as a narrative-driven game. I think it is narrative-driven, but it's a roguelite, right? And a lot of roguelikes and roguelites are not very story-driven.
Right.
They do have story, but it's like you immerse yourself and you tell yourself the story or things like that, or whatnot. Like Spelunky doesn't really have a story per se, but you live it. All video games have a story.
I mean, I feel like for the most part, a lot of those top-down kind of games, are even you can tell that the story was tacked on after the mechanics of the game were put in place.
Yeah, and Hades is not that way. Hades, the story is integral, and in fact, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that the idea for the story is what caused them to make the game. I don't know for sure, but the idea that if you haven't played Hades, you are the son of Hades, Zagreus, and you're trying to escape hell. Not really, it's not, that sounds worse than it is. You're really kind of a teenager having daddy issues. Hades is not quite as bad a dude as
we paint him out to be.
Yeah, as the myths have painted him out to be, right? Like the whole Persephone thing was consensual in this and stuff like that, right? Like, and you're his son, and Hades. I mean, he's the god of the underworld. He's not a He's not a Boy Scout.
He's still your dad.
But he's your dad.
He's still annoying.
But it's this hulking guy, and he sits at a desk, and does paperwork, because that's what you have to do to keep track of all these souls. And you're having a spat with him, and you just want to get out of hell because he tells you can't go. It's like you can't leave. You're like, I'm gonna leave, and so you have to fight your way through the different levels of Greek hell to try to escape. And every time you die, you're an immortal, so you're just born again in the River of Styx.
Out of sitting there, be like.
And the real cool thing that Hades does is it's one of these roguelites that has a hub. Once you die, you go back to it. A lot of them do this. Enter the Gungeon does this, another great roguelike. And you go back to it, and then all the NPCs there have dialogue changed based on the things that you've seen and interacted with, how many times you've died. And so you get to have story moments when you're like frustrated because it's roguelite, it's hard, you've died again, you have to start all over again. I don't want to do that right now, but I'll go talk to all these people. And there's like various, little romance options for you. There's a relationship with your dad. There's a relationship with your adopted mother. There's like all of these things that you can do and progress the story. And then it gives you little helps for your little advantages for the gameplay. And then once you get out and the things you discover and all this stuff it's really neatly interlocked together. It is a brilliant masterpiece of a game.
I mean, it sounds like it's a family drama with
It's a family drama where you go kill shades and there's a bone serpent that tries to kill you, but he's basically your pet by the end, even though he's still trying to kill you. Like, it's great. Highly recommend Hades.
I'm gonna get that. My next one is a classic.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with BioShock.
BioShock. Okay.
I mean,
which BioShock's your favorite?
I think 2 and 3 have...
Three being infinite, right?
I would say all 3 were good.
Okay.
All 3 were good. I feel like, each of them did different things, but what really got me about BioShock was the storytelling. It's just like, I remember the first time I played BioShock, and you go down in the water, you don't know what's going on, you know who you are, you hear those hints about the would you kindly and everything, and it's just the story is so immersive in how they drop the hints, they drop the clues, and because it's a more linear storytelling, I'm able to pick up, like, we talked about this last night, where like sometimes when the sandbox is too big, you're starting to get, parts of the story out of order, and it makes it hard to put things together.
Right, like Elden Ring, spoilers didn't make my list, though. It's one of my favorite games of all time, because it has fantastic lore. But the story is not necessarily the same thing to me.
I mean, I feel like for Elden Ring, the story wasn't the highlight for me, It was just the beautiful world. It's a beautiful world.
Yeah, the amazing gameplay.
The mechanics are great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can do so many things with the characters. But because it was so sprawling, where like after the game opens up, you could go anywhere. I had trouble keeping track of
and they make it hard in those games to follow the story.
Yeah.
Like if you haven't played the Dark Souls games, you don't know how they do story beats, and you can just miss most of the story without knowing it. And I'm an expert in these games, and I still missed a big chunk of the story. I have to go watch YouTube videos to get the story.
I did that too.
And there's a really great story to Elden Ring, but it's just not usually part of your play experience.
You gotta work for it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about having to work for the story. Like, I mean, there's like a lot of times they say, readers don't like being, they don't like being kept in the dark too much.
Yeah, there's a fine line to walk there. I love the Elden Ring, and I wouldn't change a thing, but it just didn't make this particular list for that reason for me. But BioShock is amazing. Right from that first plane crash. Yeah. And then the aesthetic, mixed with
the mic, the PA telling you all these the Ayn Rand quotes.
It's so good.
And then I'm one of those guys where like I'm clueless until the reveal. Like my wife would be like, "Oh, I think he's dead."
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Oh no, why'd you do it?" And she always.
And we won't spoil the reveal, but the reveals in BioShock series are all fantastic.
And I caught nothing. And so when it hit me, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is." Yeah. Then you replay all the scenes in your head where they're giving you clues, and I just, I never got them. And then afterwards, BioShock is one of those games where I don't replay games. Once I play it, I'm basically done with it. But, there are a few games where I play and I will replay it because it was so immersive. I was so swept into it that I knew I missed things that I really want to find. find again?
Well, number 3 for me is one I'm happy to have make my list, because when I did my favorite video games of all time here on YouTube, it's one that didn't make my list.
Okay.
It was just right in the honorable mentions, and that is Undertale.
Okay.
And you mentioned to me you hadn't ever finished Undertale, which is a tragedy. It is a fantastic story and game. I love how Undertale does so much with so little, and takes so many familiar parts about the gaming experience, having played since I was young, and twists them on their head and does something new with them.
It was such fun writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember Undertale was just clever, it was witty, and it actually made you laugh.
It didn't mind being hokey funny, which, sometimes these days we're a little too cynical.
We take ourselves too seriously these days.
For hokey funny.
Yeah.
And anytime hokey funny slips into a story, the whole story pretends that it's just terrible, and then that hokiness. And just Sans and his dumb puns were so much fun, so enduring. And Papyrus and just his good-hearted attempts at being evil were so endearing. All the characters are great, and playing through the story was a lot of fun. And it's hokey, and it's cheesy,
and it's okay.
And it's okay.
And it carried. The thing is, like, a lot of these kind of games that that are powered by dialogue, powered by story, like the gameplay isn't great.
Yes.
But the story made it awesome.
Yes.
And usually when you have bad gameplay, you don't, or not great gameplay, it's the story usually can't carry it. But this game could.
Yeah, and I love what they did with the actual gameplay. It was a really interesting take
cute.
on the little. If you haven't played Undertale, it's an old school kind of Final Fantasy turn-based combat system, except when they attack you, you turn into this little heart, and you have to do a little obstacle course thing that's a little bit like playing Asteroids or something like that, except modern and fluid, and it plays really well. It's just enough twitch and just enough of an upgrade to that system that I found it wonderful all the way through to the end. By the end, it's like you're a little tired of it, but they've been...
But the story
Toby
and
has
dialogue
been
is so good.
really smart in keeping back things so that as you go through, it gets a little harder, and they try new things, so you're still engaged by it. I don't think that I could do a second game of that style, but the first game, the gameplay worked really well for me, and it all mixed together. It's a great game.
I should finish it one of these days. Okay.
What's your number 3?
Number 3, I'm gonna go with The Witcher.
Witcher
3.
Witcher 3 specifically.
Witcher 1 and 2 were good for its time.
Yes. Witcher 3.
Witcher 3, and on top of Witcher 3, the expansions.
Yeah.
The
Wild Hunt
expansions
and stuff.
were phenomenal.
It made my honorable mention list,
Okay.
And almost made it onto the list. It's one of those things though where it's like it's kind of open world-ish and things like that, and so it's like almost like it's got more story, way more story than Skyrim, but it's got that same sort of feel where it's like I'm living the story.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: have you ever gone into the Witcher 3 game and just logged in just to play Gwent?
Yes, I have. Yes. Gwent is really good.
I mean, I played Gwent in the game for hours on end.
Yep.
I spent just as much time hunting down Gwent cards, and then I played Gwent outside of the game when it came out, when the card game came out.
And I never got around to doing that. But why do you love Witcher 3?
I mean, like, The Witcher 3, and along with the other games that we'll mention later on, like, the storytelling made me care about the characters, and not just about the characters. It made me care about like the bad guys, or like some of the quests, like with like unborn baby and everything. And it's like I cared to find the right resolution for these characters, as opposed to like in other games where if I wasn't just as invested, I would just click through the dialogue and to try to get to the ending. But in this case, I want to make sure I get the right ending for the right characters, And when I do play, when I hang out with the other Witchers and go back to Vesemir and everything, it's like I want to live in this world and really kind of like understand the lore and see where they're going and see like what kind of propels them further into the game.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I would completely agree with you on that. It is probably the best story for that style of game I've ever played.
Absolutely. And then when they did the expansions, it just felt like proper closure.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
So.
Okay. So my number 2.
Okay.
We've actually already talked about it. It was BioShock.
Okay.
So BioShock, little higher on my list than yours. Though all these games are fantastic, so it's kind of hard to rank them. I want to mention BioShock Infinite because it gets overshadowed by the other games because the other games are more story driven, and BioShock Infinite has a little bit of it's an FPS where the others aren't really. The others are more survival horror than
fair.
than they are FPS. I think they're riding that line, and then Infinite goes straight into FPS world, which I love FPSs, and I suffer survival horror sometimes. It's not my favorite genre. Even things like Metal Gear, people are like, why isn't Metal Gear on your list? They have fantastic stories. I have to suffer through Metal Gear games.
I cannot play stealth games for the life of me. I don't think I've ever gotten past like the first level of a stealth. I'm just not a stealthy guy.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And the survival horror, you got to sneak away from monsters instead of shoot them and stuff.
Do you like horror movies?
I do like horror movies.
I don't like horror movies.
Okay.
So like when I play like Dead Space, which is honestly another great game.
Yeah, it is a fantastic game.
I'm just a chicken. You know?
Yeah, Dead Space is also really good with the jump scares. There's always something popping out that you have to blow the limbs off of. But BioShock Infinite. Did you play Infinite?
I did. Okay. I mean, I thought it was a brilliantly designed game.
Yes.
Definitely, like the story-wise, it wasn't as engaging.
It wasn't
it was the third story in a trilogy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I thought like for that game, you know, they just went to the creative director and just like, go nuts.
Yeah.
Give us what you got. Mm-hmm. Give us your fever dreams.
Yep.
And they did, and it was
it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful game.
I love the like I know people kind of rag on it a little bit sometimes, but I love here's your Disney princess. Now get her out of this incredibly brutal world where you're blowing people's faces off. Is basically kind of the story of the game.
They had a play. Remember that play they put
did.
Up?
They had that play at the beginning. Yeah. And the ending, you know, does not land on the level of BioShock 1, but in some ways it's more ambitious, and I give it points for that, and I love the ending. I would much rather have people be super ambitious, like in the BioShock series.
And not quite hit the mark.
The mark.
As opposed to not even try.
Yeah, to not even try. And yes, it has some issues, but it's still like one of my favorite story beats in any game ever is the ending of Infinite. I keep saying Infamous because I said infamous earlier, and that makes me want to say Infinite. I really think that it was a cool idea executed well, and any scratches on it are kind of like beauty marks rather than they are anything else. And so I love the whole BioShock trilogy. Yeah. I think they are just excellent games, and I wish we had many, many more games like of that caliber of ambition.
Right. I mean, I guess then moving on to my number 2, which will kind of segue that is I'm going to go with The Last of Us.
Okay, another very ambitious game.
I mean, this is one of the few games that that were adapted into film and television.
Right, a very good film and television show.
What I so deeply appreciate about the show is that they took segments of the game and put it in the show. So like so many of the ways they shot the scene felt like I was kind of sneaking through around shelves and around under tables and everything. And like the spoiler alert, but like the end of the first season when like they had
don't spoil the end. Don't spoil the end for people. I won't spoil the end. We can't spoil the end. The ending is what makes the whole thing work.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say there's a certain scene where things have gone bad and you're running around, you're hiding. It's straight from the game, and I love that. I never realized how much like that was like so cool for me because part of the story of Last of Us is like experiencing everything that Joel and Ellie go through, and then you see it and they're kind of experiencing that same kind of like difficulties, and I'm like, it was.
So I'll admit dirty secret time. So I haven't played Last of Us 1 or 2
Okay.
because I don't like survival horror. So instead, I went and watched Let's Plays of just the story highlights,
Right.
so that I could experience the story. And you pointed out to me when I was talking about this, you're like, you don't really get it because you don't get the struggle if you're not playing it, which I get. It's part of the art.
Yeah.
I just did not want to go through a giant survival horror,
it's a
count
long
my
game.
bullets sort of thing. And so I didn't. I just watched this, and I thought it was fantastic. It was a really good watch. But
and like the whole zombie fungus thing,
Yeah.
I was like, that kind of makes sense.
yeah,
Because
there's real life zombie
the
fungi.
idea about zombies, you're always kind of like, okay, I will accept it as reality. But now that, especially in the show when they talk about how fungus works and everything, I'm like, that could really happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly more realistic than bodies crawling out of graves with no sinew on them and things like that. So yeah, they're obviously fantastic story-driven games that maybe should have made my list, but I hadn't played them, so I figure I can't actually put them on my list. My number one will surprise no one.
Okay.
Who has watched any of my content, because it's one of my favorite games of all time. It's definitely my favorite story-driven. It's Final Fantasy X. It's my favorite Final Fantasy. It's like at the end of when I was willing to put up with the slow pace of Final Fantasy combat sequences.
Is that the one where they kind of went back to the fantasy? Or was that 9?
That was 9.
Okay, what was
so
10?
10 is Blitzball, giant swimming in
the big sphere,
big
gaming
spheres.
sphere.
And what I love about 10 is it has some really great world building. Now,
Great characters. I remember
and
that
great
one,
characters. Final Fantasy has this danger of just like packing in so many ideas and so many weird ideas that you really never know what's going on, right? And I really like 6, 7, and 8.
Did you like 8?
I liked 8.
Okay.
8 is Squall. It's I liked all of them. I liked 9 as well. But making sense of the stories in those games is sometimes like you need the giant board of like all these weird ideas, and it sometimes doesn't click, but 10 did. 10 absolutely
10
just
had
clicked
a good,
for me.
coherent, beautiful
Like,
story.
I love that the main character of 10, her job is to go around and the spirits of dead things come back to life and become monsters, right? I don't know if you remember this. And her job is she's a priestess that goes and puts the spirits to rest. So it both explains why you're getting attacked when you leave a village all the time, because there's too many spirits. Nobody's been doing this enough. And why there's all these wandering monsters. She has a real job that's a fantasy job that's really cool, and she's on a pilgrimage that's part of this. Yeah, she's a Ghostbuster. Yeah, and it all kind of works really well together.
And this is your number one.
My number one story of a game. It hit right in the right place for me, and so it sits in this kind of reverence position.
Okay.
That for me, it's like this is the culmination of my love of the Final Fantasy series. I've never gotten into a Final Fantasy as much as I've gotten into those ones.
I remember after I played 10. I played 10x2.
X2, X2 is rough.
Was it rough?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I never beat it. I remember I never beat it. And then after that, I was kind of like, then they went to the MMO model and everything else.
I played 12, and I thought 12 was fine.
12 was fine?
12 has one of my favorite characters in a Final Fantasy game ever, which is this guy who's just like, I'm the main character, even though he's not, and he narrates his own life in a very writerly sort of way that's a lot of fun. But 12 also has him being followed around by a giant bunny girl in lingerie. And the lingerie aspect of Final Fantasy, could we scale back on the amount of female characters wearing lingerie as their clothing?
It makes terrible armor.
It makes, You just scale that back a little bit. You can maybe make a world where you've got your lingerie world where it makes sense, and then give us some real clothing.
Give them real clothing.
I know they've done that.
They're gonna be out in the elements. It's gonna
Yeah.
be cold. It's gonna
Yeah.
be hot.
A little less lingerie, please.
Right. Okay. And then my number one, oh man, was Grand Theft Auto 5. And I mean, with this story, I remember this is the very first video game where I played it, and literally right when the end credits were rolling, I was like, I am really gonna miss these guys. And I've never thought of it thought that way. Like I never thought like I want to be friends with Geralt, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna miss hanging out with you, Geralt. But
You didn't get tired of getting asked to go bowling?
wait,
That's 5, right? Where your cousin calls you and wants to go bowling all the time, or is that?
I don't remember that.
Which one was it?
I just remember like I actually didn't like any of the characters early on.
Well,
And then as it went, I just remember like I was like they just really took on a life of their own for me. All their motivations were honest and like unique to them. And like even though like some of them were jerks, you're the right kind of jerk. You know, you are somebody that I would be like, he's probably not a very good person, but I would totally hang out with him all day because he's just like
entertaining, interesting,
and like like their heart, no matter how black, is in the right place.
Right.
And you can just kind of see their journey, how they go, and like it just felt so real and so alive. Like I watched the movie. I watched a very long running TV show.
Yeah, the games like GTA 5 is kind of like where I don't want to say games came into their own, but game stories really started to come into their own right around that generation. That's why it's still like Skyrim on basically every device. You can play GTA on your watch and all this stuff. It's just like really enduring, kind of showing off what video games like. We talked about playing all these old games when we were kids that they really couldn't do what they wanted to. You can tell the programmers had these brilliant ideas, like Contra, when it went to like
the 3D mode.
The 3D mode, you could see.
We try to make it 3D. This is a 3D issue we can get.
But they're trying to do it now. Video game designers can actually do it, and it's really cool.
Well, I mean, you can tell like back then, those were game developers who had we need a story for this.
Yeah.
As opposed to now, we have the framework.
Yeah.
Let's write a great story and build the game around that. I mean, what's great about GTA is that like I was saying earlier, how games like Elden Ring, Breath of the Wild, it was kind of hard to keep track of the story because if you miss a part of the story, then you're kind of lost.
Yep.
With GTA is it was an open sandbox, but they still guided you through the story, so you weren't missing. You were following along these characters' experiences, and it even like played like a book, where like you swap points of view every now and then. So then you're seeing all their different viewpoints and how everything comes together at the very end.
Well, it's been very fun having you, Wes.
Awesome, man.
Tell everybody about your book again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So this is The Art of Prophecy. It is about a prophecy that fails very early in the book and the aftermath of what happens to the people, the characters, the chosen one who now doesn't have a job. And it's out now. And the second book, The Art of Destiny, is going to come out in September of this year.
Awesome, Wes. Thanks for coming.
Awesome, man.
And if you guys want more Wes, he and I are going to right now go and do a live stream, which will have been on the channel long ago, but you can go back and watch that and see Reddit rapid fire questions at Wes. So if you want to see more of Wes, head back on the channel and watch our live stream together.
Fantastic.